Welcome to the Safe Money Retirement Show with certified financial fiduciary Tim Wood.
Let's sit down and make an actual plan, and we have definitely got to factor in that retirement danger zone. I wish to God someone had sat down and done that with my dad. We wish we would have known about these things.
Tim is a retirement and income planning expert, best-selling author, and the founder of SafeMoneyRetirement.com. Tim focuses on wealth management, retirement income, tax and long-term care planning, and so much more.
Today is your opportunity to build the tomorrow you want. You've got an 87% chance of success. Well, son, that's a 13% chance of failure.
And now, the Safe Money Retirement Show with Tim Wood.
Welcome in to this week's edition of the Safe Money Retirement Show. It's all powered by SafeMoneyRetirement.com. And as we are every single week, so glad to be joined by the founder, president, and certified financial fiduciary, Mr. Tim Wood. My name's Kevin McAlpin, and we appreciate you being with us on the show. And we got a lot to get to on the program here today. But first things first, we say hello to the star of the show, the man of the hour, my buddy Tim Wood. And Tim, it's always great to be with you, sir. I hope you're doing well today.
I'm doing fantastic. It's definitely getting plenty hot out there. Whew. The sweltering heat is one of my least favorite times of year, but I mean, here we are, right? It's baseball season. It's supposed to be stupid hot. That's part of it.
It melts your ice a lot faster in the brown liquor too, doesn't it?
It melts everything. It melts your skin, man.
That's right.
It's and playing golf is rough this time of year. I know that's serious first world problems, but man, in this heat. But, I thought you and I were talking about that back nine golf, the virtual golf.
Yeah.
It's really cool. Yeah, it's a really cool thing. And I took a friend of mine that's over 70 years old, and I thought he'd hate it. He absolutely loved it.
Nice.
We're going back Wednesday, actually. We're meeting for dinner and going back again. So, yeah, it's really cool.
Best part is you don't get sunburn out there, and it's a climate-controlled environment, right?
That's right. And you can play all these courses you've never even thought that you would get to play. And it's pretty good, man. It's pretty realistic. It's fun.
Well, one of these times you and I will get there. I fear that you might take me down, but you never know. It's why you play the game, right?
That's right. We'll see.
No doubt. Well, we got a lot to cover on the show here today. We could talk about our golf game. I could tell you how high the handicap is. You don't want to hear about any of that. One thing I know our listeners do want to know, Tim, about is Social Security. And we've been hearing now for the last couple of years that there's a deadline, that the trust fund will go dry by 2033. But now even that deadline may be a little inaccurate. Saw a new report here lately, and it says the assumptions behind the system, like future birth rates, might be a little optimistic. So that could push the deadline even earlier. Let's say 2032. And if Congress does nothing, it could mean benefits are slashed by 22% across the board. So Tim Wood, I ask you, if Social Security has a problem and it's bigger than we think, what does that mean for our listeners now who are either near or even newly into their retirement?
You just got to make a plan.
Yeah.
You know, it's the same thing that y'all hear me say every single week. We just got to make a plan for that. And yeah, when you first started reading this, I was going to cut you off and say, now it's looking like 2032, but I figured you'd get there. Make a plan. You know, I get this all the time. Literally, it just happened 48 hours ago. I was talking to a client and they said, oh my God, what am I going to do when Social Security goes away? Listen to me. No one's talking about Social Security going away. That is not what the conversation is. Mm-hmm. The conversation is we're going to have to cut some benefits if Congress and the president don't do something between now and 2032. Now, we all hope they will. But if they don't, we're not talking about Social Security going away. We're just talking about a reduction in benefits. But to answer your question, what do? You make a plan. You figure out, okay, well, what are the potential reductions going to be? Let's see how much we would need to put into one of these guaranteed lifetime income plans now to basically recoup that you would lose if that happens in 2032. And let's just let it go. And if you don't need to turn it on, if it never goes down, if that reduction doesn't happen, hallelujah, there's an extra income plan you got. And if it does happen, we turn that on, bam, you're set. It's like nothing happened to you. So make a plan. Again, like everything that we say, we just need to make a wise plan, and same thing for Social Security.
it's kind of really just sort of finding that middle ground, right? Because I know there's some folks listening that will just assume, Tim, that everything's going to be fine. And then there's another pocket of listeners that are thinking it's going to be gone. It's going to be vanish forever. It's really just finding that opportunity to make that plan, but also make it in the middle so you're not on one extreme or the other, right?
Yeah, well, and one thing to keep in mind also is that a lot of people out there may be making their decision based on outdated data.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? They may be using assumptions from, that someone wrote something in the 80s or 90s. Well, guess what? You need to read something that someone's saying now because things are totally different, not only in these plans, but in everything to do with retirement. The last 50 years has brought on massive changes all through retirement, through everything. So make sure that you're using proper numbers. Another thing that people need to keep in mind of is the benefits now and the benefits that we're going to get moving forward are based on the generation that's working now. So the people that are working now pay those taxes, and that's what pays us the Social Security. So that's one of the little things that I don't hear people talk about a lot that could wind up becoming a challenge is the workforce. And if the workforce keeps dwindling somewhat, and we're counting on that, I mean, that could be a factor as well, is how it's actually funded. A bigger shortfall, though, does raise the risk of benefit cuts. So every time that we have a shortfall, which again, that's 2032, that's why there would be a benefit cut, is because there's going to be a shortfall. Okay, those things go together. But that doesn't mean that's going to be the end of the story. It doesn't mean we're going to do a one-time fix in 2032 and magically, the angels come down and everything's great. That's not what's going to happen. That means that's going to fix it right that moment. If things keep getting more expensive and everything else keeps happening, that doesn't mean there's not going to be more cuts. So, I and everyone listening pray to God that someone in Congress does something about it. But if they don't, that's where we're going to be. And then basically the last thing that I would say is where retirees are going to feel it the most is just the difference in how much they would get. The physical difference in the amount of money. So if you were getting $2,000 a month, and if we just do have a 20%, now actually the numbers I've heard are about 23%, but let's just say 20%, you have a 20% cut on $2,000 a month. Well, brother, that takes you down to $1,600 a month right now. Done. Well, what are you going to do about that? Because there's some people living on Social Security that are literally living paycheck to paycheck. So you need to make sure you've got a plan. You need to make sure your mom and dad have a plan. You need to make sure the people in church have a plan. What are you going to do if this doesn't get fixed? Because right now we are just banking on the fact that the government's going to fix it. Now, I don't know about y'all.
I know where this is going. Do I need to go
any further with that? Yeah, I think everyone knows where I'm going with that because we all feel the same way.
Right.
So make your own plan. Be wise yourself and make sure you're prepared in case that cut happens. You want to make sure you got a plan.
And really, when it comes to being proactive in our planning, Tim, there's a chance that we could see Congress act, but there's a chance it could take them a few more years. So if they were to wait until the last minute, as we've seen from time to time over the years, does that just sort of throw another wrench into there for listeners who are maybe in their 60s, low 70s, knowing, okay, something might be done, something might not be done, we don't know, really just continuing to plan for the unexpected?
That's right. And like I said, if you get an income plan and plan on it turning on in 2032 and they fix it and you don't need to turn it on, hallelujah, let it go. You know what I'm saying? And just let it keep growing and growing and growing. But that gives you one more piece of income you can turn on at some point in the future if you ever need it. And if you don't, if you never turn it on, then congratulations, whoever your beneficiary gets all that money as a death benefit when you're gone. It's kind of a win-win situation, so make sure you're prepared. If you don't ever need to use it, great, someone gets it as a death benefit. So it's kind of a no-lose situation.
One thing we do know, folks, we cannot control what happens or doesn't happen when it comes to Congress. But one thing you can control is how prepared you are. Now, obviously, if we see cuts in Social Security benefits, the question becomes quite simple. where will the rest of your income come from? If a 22% cut to Social Security could change your lifestyle, don't wait for Washington to act, folks. Tim Wood and the team at Safe Money Retirement, they are here to help start that planning process right now, and they're here to do so with absolutely no cost and no obligation whatsoever. You want to learn more? You want to get on Tim's calendar? Keep this phone number handy, folks. 800-913-SAFE. That's 800-913-7233 or online anytime. It's safemoneyretirement.com. Again, safemoneyretirement.com. And Tim, it sort of leads me into our listener submitted question of the week. We got this one in just a couple of days ago, and I want to read this to you, get your thoughts on what we saw here just a couple of days ago when this was submitted to us. And it says, my wife and I are scared to spend money in retirement, right? We've saved all these years, but really they're looking for your help to create a plan that allows them to check those big bucket list items off, really avoid missing out on opportunities. So Tim, how can you help these listeners that are really kind of having a little fear of missing out the older they get and the further they get into retirement?
FOMO.
There you go.
Big time. That's right. Yeah, absolutely. And it's something, if y'all don't already have a copy of my book, get it. We'll send you one, no charge. But it's what I call in my book, underliving your retirement. So there's kind of a happy medium, right? You don't want to underlive your retirement, but you also don't want to overlive your retirement. You know, I couldn't go retire right now like Elon Musk could, but I also don't need to retire like someone that doesn't even have a home. You know what I mean? You got to have your happy medium and find where it is. But yeah, man, I talk to people all the time that are afraid of running out of money. You know, that's the number one fear people have in retirement. There's actually a study on my website. You can get it right off the media tab of safemoneyretirement.com. It shows the biggest fear in retirement is running out of money before you run out of life. And the biggest thing that brings happiness in retirement is knowing you've got enough income to cover your bills for the rest of your life. So that's one of the main things I work with people on. But I also work with them to make sure they don't underlive their retirement. And what do I mean by that? I have people that are holding their money so close to the vest, especially these days, Kevin, especially with, I mean, my goodness, you get up in the morning and you turn on the Today Show or Good Morning America, you don't know what you're going to see.
Right.
There's no telling what craziness happened overnight in Europe or, you know, in Asia or whatever. There's no telling.
Right.
So making sure that you've got that plan, but making sure that you're able to do all the things that you planned on doing. When I do seminars, I got one coming up here locally, I always say this, you know what? I always hear people when they're younger, when they're in their 50s and 60s, they always say, man, when I retire, I'm going to join the country club. I'm going to take that world cruise. I'm going to go to here. I'm going to do this. I'm going to do that. But then so many people hold everything so tight to the vest that they don't do it when they're in retirement. And then they wind up passing all that money to their son or their daughter. What do you think the son or daughter do when they get all that money? They join the country club. They take the world cruise. They take all the trips. They do all the things you were wanting to do. So am I saying not to leave anything to your beneficiaries, to your kids, to your grandkids? Absolutely not. We put that as part of the plan. But we use your retirement money for you. Okay, that's what we do. And we want to make sure that you're not underliving your retirement and we're getting you as much guaranteed lifetime income as you can possibly get. I know we're running short on this segment, but just to give you just a real quick example, right now, if someone were just to pull money out of an account, somewhere between 2 and 2.5% is probably the safe number that they could pull out and probably make it through the rest of their life. And there's a story on my website, again, media tab on safemoneyretirement.com. Dr. Wade Pfau is absolutely destroying the 4% rule and showing how it should be between 2 and 2.5% now. But here's my point. Now, rates vary and everything changes all the time, but I can get you into a plan that pays at least twice that much on a guaranteed basis for you and your wife that you can't outlive. Now, why would you want to take out and hope you don't outlive and take out half as much or more than half as much when we can get you into a plan with an A-rated company that's going to pay you guaranteed as long as you and your wife are living? And if there's any money left in that plan when you're gone, it all goes to your beneficiaries. Why would you want to make that decision? Plus, that's going to help you not underlive your retirement. It's going to take away that fear they were talking about in that question and help you to enjoy your retirement because now you've got the money to do what you want and what you've always planned on doing.
If you've got similar fears about underliving your retirement, you're looking for a plan that allows you to spend in retirement. Cross those big bucket list items off the list. Get active in those first few years of your retirement. Look no further than Tim Wood and his team at Safe Money Retirement. And if you would like to learn more, you want to get on his calendar, you want to pick up a complimentary copy of his book, it's called Safe Money Retirement, Your Game Plan for Success, and it is yours, complimentary with no obligation if you're one of our first 5 callers right now. 800-913-SAFE. Again, 800-913-7233. Online anytime. It's safemoneyretirement.com. That's safemoneyretirement.com. All right, when we return, if you've got one of the most stressful jobs in America, what could that mean for you in retirement? We'll explain as we continue with this week's edition of the Safe Money Retirement Show with Tim Wood right after this.
Hi, it's Glenn Beck. You've heard me talk about Tim Wood, certified financial fiduciary and owner of Safe Money Retirement for a while now. But what I haven't told you is that he's also a retirement income certified professional. Now, why should you care? Well, maybe you have pre-tax and after-tax retirement accounts, and you need to know how that's going to work. Or maybe you still don't have enough guaranteed lifetime income to cover your monthly bills. Or maybe your entire savings is still exposed to risk. Listen, I met Tim personally, and I can tell you that his team can help you. I want you to write this down, safemoneyretirement.com/Beck. Or call 800-913-SAFE to schedule a no-obligation, free 15-minute discovery call with Tim. You know I don't trust just anyone, so do your own homework on Tim Wood at safemoneyretirement.com/Beck and request a copy of his best-selling book. 800-913-SAFE, safemoneyretirement.com/Beck. Get started today.
It is the Safe Money Retirement Show, and we're glad to have you with us. Alongside Tim Wood, he's the founder, president, and certified financial fiduciary with Safe Money Retirement. My name's Kevin McAlpin. Tim and I are so happy to have you with us once again on the show. If you're new, welcome aboard. I know we do have a lot of loyal listeners out there that follow us each and every week. If that's you, thanks again for carving out part of your day to spend with us here on the show. All right, so Tim, you and I were just talking about this off air, having a little bit fun about some of the most stressful jobs in America. Now, 2 of the 3 that I found on this recent list weren't overly surprising, right? Urologist is on there. Judge is on there. But video editor, one of the most stressful jobs in America. That one jumped off the charts to you, didn't it?
It did. That seems weird to me. I would think stockbroker, or I can think of several other things that I would think would be way more stressful than a video editor. But there's probably a video editor listening to this show thinking, son, you don't have any idea. So right. I could be totally wrong there, man. I
got to turn highlights around in a minute and a half. You try to do that, right? You know?
Right. So I could be totally wrong. Yeah.
Look, I'm just happy I know how to turn the on-air button on my microphone. That's about as far as I can get with it. So I'm not going to end up on the most stressful jobs in America. But I bring it up because, Tim, for folks who do have a stressful job, nearly half of workers say they feel a lot of pressure 9 to 5 every single day. High achievers often expect retirement to bring relief, but when their identity is sort of tied and connected to their work, we know that transition can be a little bit harder. So, Tim, I ask you, what are some changes you've seen in that first year or two? Folks leaving the workforce, they're finding their footing in retirement. What are some of the big challenges you've seen for folks making that adjustment?
Man, just making that transition is a huge thing. I mean, I see that as a challenge every single time. And one of the questions that I ask everyone in my fact finder, which I think is a little different than a lot of other people out there, is what are you going to do in retirement? Because honest to God, if all your plan is to sit on the couch and watch reruns of Oprah all day, you're not going to need retirement for very long. Right. I mean, I hate to put it that way, but if you're just going to be a couch potato, then your days are going to be numbered right off the bat. You can't do that. That's at no point in life can you do that, and you certainly can't do that in your 60s, 70s, or 80s until you get to the point where you have to do that. That's a different story. That's not what I'm talking about. But yeah, just stress is everywhere, and people are, they're just super stressed, and people need to stay engaged. I don't care how old you are, you need some sort of a purpose. I think that's one of the things with us human beings is we've got to have purpose. If you have no purpose, depression's going to set in, loneliness is going to set in, isolationism is going to set in. All these things are going to set in if you don't have a purpose. So you need to make sure that you've got a purpose. And that's part of that transition, right? If you've been working your whole life and now all of a sudden, I mean, for the first few months, I mean, if you and I were to retire today, man, you and I would enjoy the heck out of playing golf every day for a while, fishing.
Yeah.
Going and hanging out with, some of the old Braves players, I mean, we could have a lot of fun. But after about 6 months of that, you and I both would get up and go, I've played golf. I've done this. I've done that. Now what the heck am I going to do?
Right.
You know what I'm saying? So you need to find something. And also, the health consequences can really add up if you're not doing something. You've got to stay active. But I'm not even necessarily 100% just talking about physical health. I'm talking about mental, spiritual, emotional health. I mean, not being connected is huge. A lot of people, when they retire, they decide they're going to do more with their church, or they're going to do more with, this charity group that I'm really working a lot with, or I've always wanted to start my own business. I got one client that he's always wanted to do woodworking. Over the last few years of working, he actually bought all of the different, I don't know all the names of the things, the lathes and all the stuff to work with wood. He's got a whole workshop now. Now he's got this huge Etsy shop and literally has more orders than he can handle. And that's what he's doing. Okay, great. Find something that's going to keep you mentally and physically and emotionally and spiritually engaged in doing something. And then you've also got to look at the income versus health trade-off. So you've definitely got to keep the income coming in, but knowing that there's a way to keep that income coming in on a guaranteed basis, even if something happened to you and you couldn't work anymore at all, no matter what. Something happened and now you've got to stay on the couch because of a health issue. If you know you've got that income coming in, man, that can make a massive difference in your overall health and the stress levels being lower, everything. So those are some really big things you've got to look at. And yeah, I see it all the time. All the time people have a challenge going from, 40, 50, 60 hours a week doing this with this group of people and constantly engaged. And even when you're home over the weekend, you're texting about that report or that meeting or that client or whatever to nothing. Crickets. That's a hard transition. It's kind of like that transition you and I talk about almost every week from the acquisition phase where you're gathering all the nuts to where now it's winter and you're in retirement. Well, now you need to start using the nuts that you gathered. Now you're in the distribution phase, and making that transition is a challenge. And that's why we need to sit down and plan for it. And we need to preferably do it before you're in the middle of it. But if you're in the middle of it, we still can call some audibles and get things going. But the sooner we can make a plan and that way it's ready to execute when the day happens, that's the better, the better you can do.
Let me ask you this too. When you have one of these, stressful jobs, right? You're probably just used to being on. I'm using air quotes there. You're on all the time, right? And obviously, we talked about some of the job stress issues that can cause health problems later in life, but also there's sort of that mindset as well. You talk about finding purpose in what you do, and really that changes overnight. Once that paycheck stops, life slows down a little bit. Like you said, there's a lot of time on your hands to try to figure out how to fill it. So whether it's, taking a part-time gig or getting involved in the community, there's a lot of different ways people can do that as opposed to just going full stop as well, right?
That's right. Or a part-time retirement.
Yeah.
That's one of the things that I talk to clients about all the time, and I usually get pushback, and that's fine because I don't care what you do. If you want to do but I'm going to show you your options, and then we're going to work together and come up with what's best for you.
Yeah.
But a part-time retirement, man, there's a lot of people that are doing that, and I'm smiling. I know you can't see that on the radio, but I'm smiling because I had a client just 3 weeks ago that was in here that literally is going to go from 40 hours a week down to between 20 and 25 hours a week and make the same money because they're going to pay them that much more as a subcontractor than they paid them when they worked there.
Wow.
I want that to sink in for a second.
Wow.
Y'all think about that.
Yeah.
So, yes, being fully retired and being able to play golf all the time or do whatever you want, every day being Saturday, that sounds sexy. That sounds awesome. But sooner or later, that's going to get pretty boring. And the longer you can keep money coming in, I don't care how much you've got, the longer you can keep some money coming in from an employment source, the better. And like I said, a lot of people are finding these part-time retirement gigs where, no matter what you did, there may be a company out there willing to pay you what you may think is a ludicrous amount of money for your knowledge. So there's I've got a lot of my clients doing that. So that's another thing to think about. Again, sitting down, both people in the couple with someone like me, let's make a plan for everything. That's why we do holistic planning. I'm not just trying to sell you some plan. I'm trying to help you determine what's going to be best for your specific situation. And it includes all this ancillary stuff. It's not just the money stuff. It's all the other stuff too.
Well, if you are having trouble really envisioning what that transition into retirement will look like, believe me when I tell you, folks, you are not alone. Let Tim Wood and his team at Safe Money Retirement help you really start visualizing what all that free time is going to look like and how to find that sense of purpose in your retirement. If you'd like to learn more and also pick up a complimentary copy of Tim's book, it's called Safe Money Retirement, Your Game Plan for Success. Be one of our first 5 callers right now. 800-913-SAFE. That's 800-913-7233 or online at safemoneyretirement.com. That's safemoneyretirement.com. So, Tim, I saw an article recently in Financial Advisor magazine, and it touched on a very difficult and delicate retirement topic, and that is what really happens to your taxes when you lose a spouse. And I thought, in my opinion, the headline really said it all. And I quote, "Losing a spouse is hard, but U.S. tax laws add salt to the wound," end quote. So, Tim, let me ask you, what are some things you've seen? And boy, that just feels like the absolute double whammy that none of us want to have to ever worry about.
That's right. And I do have answers to your question, but just as a piggyback before I answer the question that you ask, that's one of the hardest conversations that I have with clients. Because, when you're sitting there with your wife, the last thing you want to think about is her being gone. And the last thing she wants to think about is you being gone.
Yeah.
And I have to bring that up with every single client. And I mean, I have literally had people fall into just tears. I've got tissues literally in every office. I've got them right here. I could reach for them right this minute because people just lose it when I bring that up. I don't even want to think about it. I know you don't. I understand that, honey. I really do. Yeah. But it's going to happen. One of y'all are going to go, or if the good Lord's good enough and takes you both at the same time, in my opinion, that's even better. But that neither here nor there, you're going to go. So we need to make a plan for it. So anyway, that being said, sit down and make a plan. But yeah, there's some things that you're going to need to think about. One of them is you're going to have basically a tax hit because you're going to get... Let's talk about what's going to happen in different things. So the Medicare premiums actually can jump up because now you're on the single instead of the couple. Okay, so that's a possibility. That normally doesn't happen, so that's not something I really want to harp on, but it can happen. It just depends on the situation. So that's one thing. What does usually happen is more of your Social Security can get taxed. Now, with Social Security, you're going to get the survivor benefit. So basically, between you and your spouse, whoever had the bigger Social Security, when someone passes, the survivor is going to get that bigger. So if you already had the bigger and your spouse passes that had the lesser, you're going to keep yours. If you had the lesser, when your spouse passes, you're going to get theirs. So that's how that works. It's called a survivor benefit. Whoever's got the higher Social Security, that's what the survivor benefit's going to be. Again, another side road. That's why with Social Security, we usually say whoever's going to have the higher Social Security, we try to defer all the way till 70 if we can. So you're getting that number as high as possible. So then there's your survivor benefit. But anyway, that's one thing to keep in mind. And then that could get taxed more because you're down to the single. You're not filing as joint. You're now filing as single. So everything changes. That's the other thing to think about is that your tax rate is going to change potentially. Depends on how many things that you've got that are going to change as far as your income. I mean, in most cases, people's income doesn't go to half when the other spouse passes. Now, are there cases like that? Yes. I've seen people that have pensions that don't have any survivorship. So if you got a pension with zero survivorship and you die, your wife doesn't get anything. It's done. So then she's losing her Social Security. Maybe she's getting yours, and then she's also losing your pension. Well, I have seen where it goes down half, but most of the time it doesn't. So now you're getting the single tax deductions, but your income hasn't gone down half as much. So it can make a really big difference. It's just, again, something we need to plan for. I know people don't want to talk about it. I realize that. Same thing when we have the conversation about life insurance, Kevin, and no one wants to talk about life insurance. That's the last thing anyone wants to think about, but it's by far the most cost-effective way to pass on money to a beneficiary, because you can do it for pennies on the dollar versus just handing them money, especially if you're handing them money in a retirement plan, because then they got to have the taxes paid within 10 years unless it's your spouse most of the time.
All right.
So a lot of things to think about there, but yeah, I mean, people don't want to think about it, but again, it kind of goes back. The whole underlying theme of this whole show has been make a plan.
Yeah.
Literally everything we have said has kind of gone back indirectly to make a plan. Sit down with a certified financial fiduciary that you can trust, that's going to go over everything A to Z for y'all, make a plan, get it written down, know what you're going to do, and then move forward confidently.
Yeah, we know losing a spouse is hard enough. The last thing you need is that double whammy of a painful tax shock to add on top. Most folks don't realize how drastically their taxes could change after the loss of a spouse, and the best time to plan for life-changing events is right now, before it actually happens. So get that conversation started with Tim Wood and the team at Safe Money Retirement today. And again, for our first 5 callers, Tim's going to do not only a deep dive of your portfolio, he's also going to provide you a complimentary copy of his book. It's called Safe Money Retirement, Your Game Plan for Success, all of which, you heard me right, it's complimentary with absolutely no obligation, so don't delay. Get on his calendar right now, 800-913-SAFE. That's 800-913-7233, or online at safemoneyretirement.com. Again, safemoneyretirement.com. And Tim, we are very quickly running out of time on this week's show. But before we do, sir, the floor is once again all yours for the final word.
Thanks, Kevin. Great show. I know we're short on time, so I'm going to keep this really quick. Yes, we talked about some really important stuff today, but every single thing we talked about comes down to making a plan, a real solid plan, not with if-come that you are hoping you don't run out of money, with guaranteed lifetime income you absolutely cannot outlive. That is what's going to bring you your own safe money retirement.
The preceding information does not represent tax, legal, or investment advice. Obviously, by contacting us now, you are only taking the first step towards protecting your retirement. No information presented today should be acted upon without meeting with a qualified, licensed insurance professional. It is important that you read all insurance contract disclosures carefully before making a purchase decision. Interest and other guarantees in annuity contracts are subject to the claims-paying ability of the insurance carrier that issued the contract. The tax consequences of annuity income should be considered with the help of a licensed tax professional. Rates and returns mentioned on this program may vary based on state availability and are subject to change without notice.